You said that a growth marketer or growth person today is not in the top 5% if they don't get at least two things. And the two things you said were understanding incrementality and local maximum. And we've talked a lot about incrementality on the show and measurements, but I think this idea of local maximum is potentially newer for some folks. I actually understood it from a different term. So maybe we can unpack that first. Like,
Yeah.
when did this idea of local maximum really click for you? You remember that moment or project that kind of like taught you this the hard way, maybe?
Yeah, I actually learned this the hard way from Fred Lalonde, who's the founder and CEO at Hopper. Um, and so just maybe to explain what a local maximum is for folks, the concept is like imagine you're blindfolded and your job is to find the highest point of the terrain you're on. And so you're gonna do a step forward, a step back, one to the left, one to the right. And if you find a higher spot, you're gonna move there, right? And you're gonna repeat that a few times until like every step you take is a lower position. And then you're like, great, I found the highest spots in this area. And you take your blindfold off and you're on top of a nice little hill, but you see this massive mountain on the other side, right? And you reach this local maximum and you think like you're at the highest possible spot, but you missed a bigger opportunity. And so for the little anecdote, I was doing my interview rounds for Hopper, and I was at my final interview round. Fred was doing himself like every candidate. So at that point, and I thought I was like I got the job, but he actually grilled me a little bit to the point where I was getting a little nervous. And one of the questions he asked me was, "Okay, so cool, we want to hire you. Sounds like you're smart, but what's like one thing you would do? What's the first thing you want to change in the app to, I don't know, like grow revenue?" I haven't thought of a good answer to that, and so we had at the time a $5 tip that people could toggle. And a lot of people, I don't remember, let's say 30% of people were actually giving us a $5 tip when they were reserving their flight because we got them like a nice price thanks to our price predictions. And so I was like a little nervous. And my first answer was like, well, 5 was random, seems a little suboptimal. So I would probably do a $4 version and the $6 version and, see where we maximize revenue, right? Seems like an easy win. And then I saw his face. I was like, oh, I'm not getting the job. Because he was like, that's literally what you're literally doing is like a local maximum. And
Mm.
I don't want you to do that. That's stupid. And it's like, very forceful CEO and trying to make a point and teaches me that lesson of like what a local maximum is. And then it's like, hey, what else do you have? And it's like, oh shit, I need to find another idea. And I was working for a bus ticketing website at the time, and we had built a little tool that sent you a notification when there was a $1 bus ticket that dropped. So I don't know if you remember Megabus in Europe. They have like the €1 bus tickets. Well, it's like 1 in 1,000, so you can never really find them. But we had like built like a little tool to send you a notification. So I used that answer, said, what if we created like a separate app and it's all flights under €5? Because Ryanair was also having like a few crazy deals like that. Because we had all this database and flight prices, and it's probably not possible to build, but it was like, yes, exactly. That's what I want to hear. That's crazy. It's probably stupid, but that's not a local maximum idea. And that's where it clicked for me, and it put me on the right track when I started the job. That I had to think big. I had to think about ideas that were potentially destructive to the original business, and being aware and conscious, like little A/B testing on a page is not how you 100x a business.
I love that. Yeah, I love this concept of local maxima. I think it makes you, you know, think creatively or outside of the box or bigger picture. I have mixed feelings about this interview style of and it sounds like he's testing how creative you are on the spot. So I think that that's a little bit interesting. But I think it also applies to, I'm a big fan of an advocate of marketing operations. And sometimes we're trying to improve the process just a little bit incrementally, um, trying to save maybe 25% of the time, get 2 hours back each week. And that kind of is more of local maximum thinking, whereas, you know, global maximum could be like, do we need this process at all? Like, can we do it a
Exactly.
completely different way? And it definitely does change the game.
The
I love that.
fastest way to do something is not to do it, right? I always tell my team, be a little lazier, you know? We all love the busy bees, you know? They're always like doing stuff and their calendar is completely full and they are like overworked. I'm like, you could probably not do 80% of what you're doing and you need to take the time to find it. I will say, like, on process optimization, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm also working for an investing app, so I understand the effect of compounding impact. And I think, like, when you can stack small wins very
Yeah.
obviously on top of each other, especially on like a process. So let's say right now we do a lot of promotions and super annoying, but like you take the terms and then you create like an FAQ because clients have questions like, how do I get this for free? Is this account eligible? And it's easy to do, but it takes a while. And so my coworker came up with just a little simple prompt to take in all the customer feedback that we've gotten from CS from the previous promotion. So all the questions they asked, the new terms and conditions, and it spits out the FAQs. Well, like, and they look great. Tweak them a little bit, well, 2 or 3% improvements to our process. But we've been able to shrink recently because of the compounding effect of all these little improvements on our process, the time to market from idea to launch a campaign by quite a bit. So on process, I think sometimes it's worth it. It's more like the A/B tests sometimes that I have issues with on like landing pages and celebrating small wins. And I don't know if like, I think if you worked in growth for a few years for the same company, like, hey, you've had so many wins on your A/B test since you started. Your conversion should be at 300% by now, but somehow it only moved like a little bit, right? So,
Mm,
and we all kind of, and there's no deep inside that like, yeah, that's not possible. I can't have a 10% increase every time I do my A/B test. And
Yeah.
yeah.
it's weird, right? Because like sometimes they're legit. It says like it has improved by 10% the conversion rate, and you ship it. You don't necessarily see it in the top line, or the results just don't stack. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I was just gonna say both examples are really cool. Like something else that you mentioned, Simone, was that like the finding out that what you were thinking was local maximum thinking sometimes is like a retrospective like analysis. It's hard in the moment to spot until it's kind of too late. What does it actually look like when you have a team or yourself and you're kind of stuck in that thinking? Can you share maybe like an example from Wealthsimple or earlier in your career? Were you able to spot it in the moment?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard because like you're bought in, it's a big group, and we've invested a lot of like resources. I think some the things I try to spot is like when you have too many wins, you know, like you're celebrating a lot of small wins in your A/B test, but it doesn't necessarily show up in the top line. And in the moment, you're like, it's going, it's going, it's going. And 6 months later, you take a step back. It's like, hey, what did this like project do for us? Like when you just take a step back and are able to see it in its entirety, and you're like, hey, we could have done like so many other things, but in the moment, you're like, let's get to the next step of the funnel, the next step of the funnel. And to give you a specific idea, and it's my bad because like I was obsessed with this, but if you worked in mobile right now, it's like in the past few years have been hard because you lose a lot of attribution, and so it's like web versus app thing coming back on the table. Like, are you better to send your Facebook ads to the web or to the app? If people land on your homepage, are you better off letting them onboard on the web? Or do you lose a bit of people, but you send them to the app and then they're becoming higher LTV customer because they have the mobile app? And that can lead you to a long series of A/B tests of like, let's try a big QR code. Let's try a text me the app. Let's try to block them completely from the web. And we tried a lot of things. And at some point I was like, hey, why are we doing this? Like, if you want the app, click here, go. And in the end, the answer was just like, let the people select what they want to do. Sign up on web, sign up on mobile. And yeah, every test was like showing a little bit of something, but in the end, it was better to just like ignore it. And yeah, I remember from my Hopper days, I was obsessed with Snapchat, and they had like the most basic website that never changed. They had one page, and it was just like get the app. Or I was like looking at big companies like Airbnb or Uber with massive resources. And then the App Store page was like the same, outdated, and they seem to not pay attention to it. And now I realize like they were right. Like after running hundreds of, I don't know if you run the like Google Play Console A/B test. Really neat tool. You can test different screenshots. You get A/B tests are addictive. Like you, especially when you have like real time mix panel or amplitude or Google Analytics results, and then you refresh all the time.
For every company that you just named that like hasn't changed something on their homepage and was just like thinking of other stuff other than like making tiny tweaks, there is a blog post saying that this one company changed the color of their button from blue to red and it 3x their conversion rate, or they changed like book a demo to chat with us right now, and it for every story there's that equivalent, right? And I think that's what's led to a lot of people thinking too small when it comes to experiments. But when you sit down and you chat with a data scientist, like I had a short stint at WordPress.com and we had a full data science team, and they were involved in helping us design the experiment that we wanted to test. And they always tried to roll us back to small changes. Like I was focused on lifecycle and email onboarding, and our whole goal was trying to increase the number of free site creations to paid site creations. And we had like 7 emails in our onboarding series, and we wanted to run a test to try to improve those. And I was scrapping that whole thing and wanted to redesign the whole thing. But the data team kept telling us like, no, we're not going to be able to tell what was that thing in the new thing that was really better here. We need to just change that one email. And it can't be a full change in the email. It has to be just one thing that we change. So how do you fight that? Like, how do you personally pressure trust or like fight back with data teams on like whether an experiment or a project is worth doing, or it's just like busy work and local minimum versus maximum?
Yeah, I mean, I love my data people, don't get me wrong. And it's great partnership. But I agree with you. Like for them, they see the world through like a pure data lens. And it's like when they tell you like you can't run 2 experiments at the same time. I'm like, yes, you can. I just did it. Like, and yeah, it's not gonna be the cleanest results, but I'm looking for signal through the noise. So yeah, and I think like sometimes I like to say I'm data driven, but I'm not data led. Like things have to make sense. I'm not to the point where I don't care about the data or I don't want to have, but too much data is a thing. And sometimes it's like we launch an A/B test or we test something, there's no impact, but it makes sense for the client. Well, just leave it there. I think where the data can be interesting is when you don't believe in something and the data shows you otherwise. Then it's like, okay, interesting. Then it's helpful for me to like rethink my priors if the data is not showing what my instinct was saying. So I think it's still really interesting. But sometimes it's just like, yeah, I just want to do this. I think it makes sense for the clients. It will work in the long term, and I have conviction. And even sometimes you can ship something that has a bit of negative impact for the future.